if you go back to like the early stages of like my renderings, I'm just like, oh yeah, it'd be cool if the engine was here and like the tubes went in front of the window and you couldn't see anything while you're driving or something. And it's like, I mean, you could do that, but it's not safe and
not very functional.
So. That's the big disconnect in a lot of renders that we see. Like, they're amazing images, but you're like, that's never gonna work. Like, that can't work. And then I find myself like reverse engineering a lot of these renders, and like, you can't do it. It's not going to work, but it's a cool picture.
Yeah. The stuff that I do, like, I try to make it buildable for other people, like people that understand fabrication.
Welcome back to another episode of Modify with TrickFactory Customs. If this is your first time watching, my name is Elvis.
Tim.
Rob.
And we have one of our first guests ever, actually, on So what is your name? Introduce yourself, all of that good stuff.
Dom host or Yoast, however you want to say it.
I know, we're trying to figure out the way to say it because it has the two dots on the top.
Yeah, it's Scandinavian. It means autumn, basically. In Norwegian. So yeah, it's basically said Yoast, but
that's pretty cool.
People just say host, so it's like whatever. You get the idea. Altered intent. I do 3D design, CAD designs. I'm also a chassis suspension enthusiast, so I try to build everything in my backyard. I don't have, access to a big shop or anything, but I just do everything in my backyard, basically.
Pretty amazing. And it's gonna. I think this is gonna be a really fun episode because we have a lot of things in common. I feel like we build, you build. I like body swaps. You are doing a body swap guy.
I saw it.
Yes, so we're gonna be doing.
I saw the Lamborghini.
And so we're gonna be talking about all of that. And the main purpose of this video, and the reason, like initially, why we reached out to you was because there was a post that Tim saw a few weeks ago.
I got tagged in.
Yeah, he got tagged in. I don't know if you saw it, but it was talking about artists. Actually, before I dive into that, we're an automotive shop based here in Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada, and this is Modified with TrickFactory Customs. And the name of our shop, obviously, is TrickFactory Customs. If you're listening for the first time, and we just love to talk about cars. We offend people on the internet sometimes with our with our words of knowledge, or I don't know, just our thoughts.
I like to believe it's based on experience.
Just speaking the truth, man.
Yep.
Sometimes people get offended.
Yes. And the way I actually found out about you was through what's his name? Do you know like Ethos Mustang? The wide body, lower Mustang, yes. So I met him like about 2 years ago now, and when I was like, you should show me like some of the things that like you see that gives you inspiration and all of that. And so I think he mentioned your channel or your Instagram, and I was like, oh, have you heard of Altered Intent? And I was like, no, who's that guy? And then I started scrolling, and I was like, oh shoot, like the amount of. It's insane how your brain works. I don't know. It's just really cool the amount of stuff you've been able to come up with. Wait, how old are you actually? Because I can't even tell.
I'm 30, actually.
That's crazy.
In August, I'll be 31. So.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. So I'm 30 and I haven't done anything, but it's like when I see what you've accomplished in, I don't know how long. We're gonna talk about how long you've been doing this, but when I see what you've accomplished in such a short time, it's like it's pretty amazing and it's very inspiring, and it gives me a lot of inspiration for my build. And so
you're the guy that encourages his wild ideas all the time.
So you're like, wait, you could do it like this, you could do it like this.
Exactly.
How did he do it? Oh, okay, I see how he did it.
Exactly. So just we usually like to say how the week has been before we dive into your story and all of that, but what's been happening for you, Tim? What's
pushing
been going
cars
on?
Out like normal. Just getting cars done, getting it finished. We got the 32 coupe done, so it's gone and on its way home, and that's pretty much been the focus of my week.
Yeah, so that orange hot rod, that thing looks sick. Oh, it looks so good. And we did a bunch of stuff to it, like fiberglass work, and repainted a bunch of things, but it looks glorious.
Yep, turned out really good.
Yeah, and I've been just bouncing around the shop like usual. Skylark. We did a lift kit on a Porsche Cayenne recently, 2 bumper install, a bunch of things that we made for it, sort of change it up a little bit, just kind of all over the map right now.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah, and you've also been doing. You've done Skylark stuff? So I don't know if you've seen, but on our Instagram, the 1,100 horsepower Skylark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just touching. We're touching on all the 3D modeling and CAD design and stuff. So like, it's going to play into this whole sort of conversation because we're pretty new to it. But I mean, it's been a huge advantage for us so far. Like it's.
Yeah.
Again, like one of my questions would be, and I don't want to get too far into it, is like, you know, the progression of where you got to where you are. And like, I tend to design stuff to my abilities at the time, but now this has opened up in a whole new range of abilities. So it's like, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been playing with, but.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So just tell us about yourself, like how you got started in this, like, just give us a spark notes.
So the 3D aspect of everything, I got started because of the Kaiser. So he's been around for like ever.
Yeah.
And I mean, years ago, then I seen like what he was doing with the Photoshop stuff before he got into the 3D stuff. So I've seen him from the beginning to where he is now.
Yeah.
And then him and then Ashthorpe, he did a lot of stuff for like Ken Block and everything. So those two designers they were the ones that were like pushing me to learn it. And I didn't go to school for anything 3D, anything
no
like
way.
that. Like,
wow.
No, yeah, like everything I do, I taught myself how to do it. So the whole 3D thing, I was just like sitting down and I was trying to learn it, and I started off learning Blender. And Blender is a free program, but you have to sit there and like learn how to make shapes basically and mess with polygons and vertexes and vertices or whatever. So it took like months to even figure out how to like make basic shapes and everything in Blender. And then it was like, okay, well, let me start like making fenders and then, you know, wheels and tires and start messing with that. And then I would say it took me a good like year and a half to really like get something down, because modeling is different from texturing, and then texturing is different from rendering. It's like a 3-4 step process, because then you have like your post effects and everything as well. So it's like you have to learn the modeling side of things, and then you have to figure out how to learn your texturings, and there's textures everywhere like online. It's just now you have to apply them to your model. And then once you go into the rendering aspect, that's when you start playing with like lighting and everything like that.
Yeah, like environments and all of that.
Yeah, I didn't realize like it was that big of a process. So I just, so I did it for like a year and a half, finally got like somewhere comfortable. And then, you know, people were saying that I was like making progress, because I did it every day for 5 years now.
Oh my gosh.
Like every day I mess with something like every day, you know, even if it's just small parts.
Yeah.
Because the 3D aspect can also transfer to CAD, which I do a lot of for like my builds. So you can take something in Blender and you can export it into a 3D file, and then you can size and scale it in like Fusion 360 and everything.
Yeah.
So that way you could get like realistic measurements and everything. So I just basically have been doing it every day since, and people just started noticing that I've been doing weird things with cars, specifically like 1972 and before, you know, is mainly what I mess with, like old muscle cars or old 50s cars, whatever. So then, because not anybody was really doing it at the time, and people were like, oh cool, this is sweet, I've never seen, you know, Chevelle look like this, or you know, a C10 look like this or whatever. So then it kind of just spiraled into people wanting work to see what their cars would look like. And up until, I want to say 3-4 years ago, like I've been working with people, like shops that go to SEMA a lot. So I've done work for like Salvage to Savage, Mikey, what was the other guy? Jaegerbomb, so he has the 2JZ Lambo.
Oh yeah, true.
I did work on that one. Maniac's Garage, they did the 49 BMW swap.
Oh, you did that one.
Yeah, I did that one.
Oh shoot. Okay, I followed that build for a while. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, John. Who else? I did the rendering for Cam. He like got second best at SEMA for Battle of the Builders. It was that 86, that GT86 that has the 8-to-1.
Yeah,
it's black.
That was a pretty cool car.
Yeah. So I did the work for that one. And I've just been kind of like jumping around with just different people and just kind of, it's weird because it was like I wasn't doing anything, and then it all of a sudden jumped to like me helping like a lot of these people out just from my posting my stuff on Instagram. So it was just like a weird random occurrence that these people started messaging me.
Nice.
That's pretty cool,
so,
man. But I'd like to say like props to you for like putting in your time, like starting from nothing and like struggling through the learning process all the way. I mean, it's that right there, that mindset, that drive is kind of what pushed you to like, you know, finally get recognized, and now you're doing your thing. So that's good on you, man. Cheers.
So
thank you.
My question is, because I'm on the technical side of things, how long does that process take? Because I found in our experience, these people, as soon as the render's done, they think the project's done. But like getting to a finished render, I know through experience is like an immense amount of time. Because I've had the guys do it for us, and I'm going back and forth like 10 o'clock at night, making little changes.
Yeah.
So like, if I was to approach you from the start to the finish, how long do you think that would take? Like, just to give a realistic sort of timeline that, you know, something like that would be great. Because I know it's a lot of work. I kind of have an idea how long it takes, but our customers think that it's just like, hey, can you do a render and then come back tomorrow and check it out? Like, so I think if as your part of the industry is like, I think it's really under-respected, because I don't think people necessarily know how much time and effort it goes into learning it and then to actually do it when you're done. Yeah.
So for me, I like to do a lot of little details. Like if you actually go and look through my pictures, you'll see I actually go and put like bolts, you know, in the fenders, or I'll add like a chassis underneath, because you don't really see it, but it's, you know, like you physically think it's there, and it also gives you that like realism aspect, because otherwise you just see nothing behind the wheel if you're actually like looking, you know what I mean? So for me, it usually takes like a couple weeks, and honestly, like I can't really say that they're ever finished, because there's been times where I'll, you know, take a couple weeks and we'll get to a good point where it's like, okay, now I can present these to my sponsors, because that's mainly what I'm helping with is like, this is my vision. Can we, you know, get these parts going on the build so I can further, you know, progress?
Yeah.
But I always go back and like touch up on it anyways, because they're like for instance, we were gonna put a wing on Cam's 86 or whatever, and he was just like, hey, like this was like months after, you know, even like after SEMA or whatever, and he's like, can we put a wing on the car just to see what a wing would look like, because I might be working with like Street Faction or whoever it was. And so I was like, I always just go back and touch up on them anyways. So technically they're not ever done in my book, because I can do so many different variations even with their projects, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's more or less like, okay, their rendering is done, but how can I make it look like in my style, which is what I've done with some of them, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's, I don't feel like it's ever done. It's always just an occurring project.
Yeah. And art is one of those subjective things too. Like your vision of, say, a client's car or somebody that approaches you to have something done is different than what their vision is too. So that back and forth is where I think probably a lot of like challenges arise, you know, through that artistic expression.
Yeah, because we're I'm doing one now with he used to be the fabricator for Salvage to Savage, Don. But he's building a 59 El Camino now, and he's just like, I want every little detail in this thing. So it's like his has been taking a while, because we have to do a full-on chassis. Like I have to make the suspension actually like look like it physically works and everything, because you can see in the bed of it, like the turbos are in the back of the bed. Like it depends on the client really, like what they want. So
yeah, I'm kind of curious, like, because we were talking about this a little bit before we got on. About like kind of like your level of like realism when you're doing your renderings, you're designing, like you're talking about this El Camino with the suspension being wide open and all that. Your level of like car knowledge and experience, how do you apply that into your rendering to sort of make it more buildable? Like this could actually be built. this could actually function really well? How do you go about that?
Well, because I do like the fabrication side of things in like real life, I know like what you can and can't do basically. So I just basically like apply it to like, okay, I mean, a lot of my renders are really slammed on the ground, which you know obviously doesn't make sense, but I just like the way it looks. But as far as like chassis and everything, I like to implement a lot of like cage work and everything because I grew up watching a lot of like racing, like GT touring stuff. So it's just like, oh, a cage is always cool to me or whatever. Always. So I'll put the cage in. I know like where it needs to be inside the car. I know, you know, where the front suspension needs to be. Like I know how like all the suspension works. All the routing for like if I do an engine bay or something, for example, like, you know, I know where it goes to the water pump or whatever for the radiator, like things like that. It's just I see it on a daily because of the people that I'm around, and then it's just like, okay, I apply it to that because that's how it actually functions. You know what I mean?
That's smart. Yeah, that's what it takes.
Yeah, whereas opposed to some of my other friends that do 3D work and they do it, they love cars but they just don't get to see them every day. So
I think that's
sometimes you see like suspension, they put suspension in a really weird place, or they put a tube in a really weird place, and it's like that would fall apart. You know what I mean? Like in real life. But
I think that's the big disconnect in a lot of renders that we see. Like they're amazing images, but you're like, that's never going to work. Like that can't work. And then I find myself like reverse engineering a lot of these renders, and like, you can't do it. It's not going to work, but it's a cool picture. So like, that's kind of the thing that we noticed that's unique about you. And one of my questions was like, what came first, the fabrication side of it or the render side of it?
I would say they both came at the same time. So when I started my fabrication journey, I started the rendering journey. So I was like learning. I would take time out of my day to learn the modeling side of everything, and then I would go like outside and then just start cutting up my cars. And just like, okay, well, how does this go? Like, how can I do this? And it was a lot of trial and error for both of them. But it's like I've been doing it for so long now that it's just like it's slowly getting to a place where I'm like comfortable. You know what I mean?
So the fabrication side of it and the effort that goes into that, because it's not an easy thing, must have had an impact on some of your render ideas now, no?
Yeah, because if you go back to like the early stages of like my renderings, I'm just like, oh yeah, it'd be cool if the engine was here and like the tubes went in front of the window and you couldn't see anything while you're driving or something. And it's like, I mean, you could do that, but it's not safe and
not very functional. So.
You're just like, oh, it's a cool yard art piece. You know?
So looks fucking badass, but
yeah, like I've even gone back and I've touched up on like old renders to new. Like I have a really weird obsession with the 57 Chevy, just because it's like my dream car. But I've done, if you go from like the very beginning, I did this weird like slammed down wide body like 57 Chevy, but then slowly I've just been like changing it, and it's the same one. It's just I've been changing it ever since, like just trying to make it better and better. So it's like, I always just touch on them just because I know what can work now and what can't work. You know what I mean? So
I feel like that was like the functionality part of it, like you mentioned. That's one big thing, because before I started at this shop, like I just used to see renders and I'm like, oh, this is the coolest thing, but I would never think of how it worked or how it would function in real life. And then when I started at the shop and started chatting with Tim and Rob, and they see some renders and I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna work. And so it's really cool to see that you pay attention not just to the design or the aesthetic part of it, but also to how it would function. I think that is just pretty awesome. So and then regarding like a lot of like your like what would I say, like the chassis and tube work and all of that stuff, you said you're not formally trained. So like how did you learn it? Just YouTube University, or did you take any courses? Or
so I used to watch I like don't really watch stuff really much anymore, but I used to be like heavy into the Fab forums. I don't know if you know Kyle Voss.
I've watched his channel.
He's the guy that like inspired me to like really just like, all right, let's go cut something up and like let's learn how to weld or whatever. And then it's weird because like I would show him things, and like he would actually respond. Like when I first started out, he was like, "Oh, that's cool, man. You got to do this. You got to do this." And then like now he like follows me, and like we go back and forth, and he's just like, "Dude, like your work is sick." And I'm like, "This is weird because like I liked your work before then or whatever." Yeah. So yeah, so I would just watch him, and then I forget what the other guy's name is. It's like he does a lot of TIG welding. I can't think of his name, but he basically like would show you how to cut tubing with just a 4.5-inch grinder.
Mm-hmm.
So you can cut it at a certain way, and it'll like actually notch the tube itself. Like you don't need a tube notcher.
Yeah.
And like how to bevel and everything. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go buy a big, lump of tube, and then I'll figure it out that way. So it was like a lot of trial and error. Then it was like, okay, I need to actually bend tube. And there's tubing, videos out there, but they don't exactly show you like how to bend exactly, like where like a bend starts and where it finishes, etc. So it's like it was really just a lot of trial and error. So I went through a lot of material, to be honest with you.
I was gonna ask you that. So like, have you gone through any car and you've just butchered it way past, and you're like, oh shoot, what have I done? Like, or do you, because it sounds like sometimes you just cut, and then like, do you think a lot, like measure 5 times or 10 times before cutting, or you just send it and figure it out later?
I used to just send it and like figure it out later, and I was just like, oh shit, this tube is crooked compared to this one. And you're like, okay, if I can notice this, then this is like really bugging me. So then that was like when I first did tubing on my 27 Model T. So then I scrapped that one completely, and now it's like I measure like 32 times, 400 times, whatever, and then I just apply it to like the other side now. So it's like I also have like a little notebook that I keep, and it's like I keep all my markings and my measurements of everything. So it's like I know a tube, I know this side worked out perfectly. It was 32 inches long. I bent it at like 18 inches or whatever to a 75 degree. Et cetera, et cetera. I notched it here. I keep that mark down so that I can mirror it to the other side. Because it's like way faster once you do it like that.
Especially if you do it like right away too. Like if you do a left side, then you do the right side like instantly.
Yeah.
Then it's like ding ding, you have a mirror image. That's a pretty good tip.
Exactly.
Man.
Yeah, so that's something that I do. I just keep it on a little book, and it's like I have this little notebook that has like, oh, you can basically build my entire chassis now if you just go based off this little
that's
book
cool,
that
man. That's cool, and it's cool to go back in time and like reflect on that, like looking through the notebook later. It's pretty cool. To do. I do the same thing, man. It's smart.
That's cool.
You end up with stacks of books. After like some time has passed, you're like, oh, that's dope, man. You go through it. It's like a little history.
Yeah, basically. Cool.
And you get to reflect on how bad you were at one time and how far
there's that too. There's that too. Oh, damn, I fucked that up.
That one sucked.
Put a big cross through it, NFG.
And do you do this full time yet or no? Like, what is it like? You have a day job?
Yeah, so I work like part-time jobs, just because like I like doing this stuff more, and it's like the position I'm in now, because I live with my grandfather. So I just basically help him out around the house, like assist him. He's at the age where it's like I have to, be there for him, basically. So it's like the trade-off is I'm here every day, but, I don't necessarily need to be at a full-time job. So I stick to the rendering and I stick to the fabrication stuff just because it is something that I want to do, but it's not something that I want to do. The fabrication side of things I necessarily don't want to do for other people. I tried doing it before, and it's like it really takes a lot of the creative freedom out of it, if that makes sense. Like, because again, people want something a certain way, how they see it or how they imagine it, because they took an idea from something, and it's like, okay, I want that. And then it's like, okay, well, I think it would look cool this way, but then we butt heads, and it's like it really takes away from it. So I realistically just want to build something to where it's like I can present something to people, like the YouTube videos or something, and it's just like, hey, I built this,
it's your
ridiculous
idea.
Here it is, and maybe I'll sell it and I'll get some money from that or whatever. But it's just, I just want to build from my mind, if that makes sense.
Like in our experience, like renders have become a really important tool for us in the shop, because I can stand there and I can explain something to a customer and they're like, yeah. And then I'll explain that exact same thing and have it rendered to what my vision is and then show it to them. And they're like, no, that's not what I was thinking at all. So it's like their perception of what you've presented. So like we use renders now, and it's like we almost have to, because like the disconnect between the way two people see the exact same information is pretty crazy sometimes. Like it's like they're just standing there like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And then you do it and they're like, what the hell is that? That's not what I was envisioning at all. So it's like it can be frustrating.
That's how you explained it though.
Yeah. So for us, like renders have taken a lot of the redos out of what we do.
Yeah.
So it's been a really good tool for us.
Yeah. And also in our shop, like we use it to sort of even just get the visual information across amongst our crew, right? Like, this is what I'm imagining, build this, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, like we transitioned through all the different stages, like because we come from a fabrication background. So in the early days, our version of a render was like wireframe. We used to do a lot of wireframe stuff. And then customers are like, yeah, that looks good. And then you start to shape the metal and they're like, can you just change this a little bit? You're like, no, that's metal. Gonna be like 2 more days, man. This is metal. So then we transitioned to like a 2-component foam and started actually shaping stuff like 3D images, and then ultimately using those as the buck to form metal, which made it a lot better because then they could see the actual shape.
Yeah.
And then now we've transitioned from that into actual 3D renders, which takes it even further because you can start adding textures and colors and all this kind of stuff. So it's eliminated a lot of stuff, but even still just going back and forth because it's not an ability that I have with the person rendering it. It's like days. It's like back and forth. So it might take 3 or 4 days, but they think that it's like this instantaneous thing. So it's like, that's why I was telling Elvis, is like, it would be nice to have somebody on like this that can sort of put a timeline to this so that customers and people understand, because I think they think these images are created in like 15 minutes. And it's like, that's not the case. It almost takes as long as me making it from scratch. Like I'm creating it first over here, and then we got to bring it to reality. So it actually extends the timeline, but eliminates the redos. Like there's less, you know what I mean? Like we just got to get to work now. So.
Yeah, that's how it is with a lot of these guys I work with. They're just like, it takes sometimes, like depending on like the work that I'm putting in, it will take, I mean, heck, even up to like a couple months, 2-3 months or whatever. And it's like, but that is saving you so much more money, especially when like some of these guys I deal with do carbon fiber work, and it's like you could completely scrap a fender that was fully carbon fiber because you screwed something up. But whereas when I gave you the design, like you knew exactly what curves and everything to make. You know what I mean? So it's like it's saving you money in the long run. It costs a little bit, but it's like think about, if you screw up something like that.
So true. I think that's an undervalued thing that most people do not sort of like, I don't think they really realize that the rendering keeps everybody on track, making sure everybody's working towards a common goal, and it takes a lot of effort just to get to that rendering part, so that, yes, like you said, the redos don't really happen. And if they do, it's like, well, you fucked up, pal. So that's on you.
Then it takes another couple weeks or a couple months to just redo the part.
And so for like the Bel Air in your background, or that one that you're building now, was all those textures, did you 3D scan them? Like, do you mess with any 3D scanning, or you just texture it like manually, like you just do everything yourself? Or like, how did you get those textures?
There is a community of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Unreal Engine.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a community of people that like will photo scan textures, like they'll photo scan 3D models, like rocks, trees, whatever, anything out in the world, basically. So there's like a whole library on the Unreal Engine side of things of like textures, so you can just go in there and they give you a seamless texture, and then it just depends on like how you apply it. So those ones on that car are just photo scan. They're actually like photo scan textures. Like if you zoom in, you could see like all the marks and everything.
The details. That's pretty cool.
So then you just apply them to your model. And it just depends on how far you go with like the modeling side of things. Like if you start adding dents and everything, it'll kind of form to that, and you can like bring up like bare steel if it's like chipped off in that area or something like that. So it's like a lot of these guys that render now, because there's like a whole like new group of people that are doing renders. Some of them are doing AI stuff, and some of them are just starting out with Blender, kind of like how I did. But you can tell that they're not putting work into the texturing side of things, which is what brings the realism. You know what I mean? So it's like in real life, if you're going to the racetrack, whatever, you're gonna have like chips on the side of the
rock
car.
rock
chips.
Yep.
You're gonna have some chips in the windows or things like that. The windows will start getting foggy and hazy and like just like other things like that. So it's like it just depends on how far you want to go, basically.
Yeah. But I think that's what separates sort of your style stuff from, like, I'm pretty sure I know what you're referring to, and all those images kind of look the same.
Yeah,
like, almost take them to the same point. So, and then you're just like, you kind of almost dismiss it. And then you go in search of stuff that's more detailed and finished out and looks more real.
Yeah, so like, so the two people for me, I mean, well, I guess it would be three, but Kaiza, he has more of like a clean style, clean aesthetic, but when he does his like dirty renders, like they actually look really good. But the main guys that stick out for me are Ashthorpe and Color Sponge. So those two guys there, they have their own company called Make Haste Corp. And they're my favorite because they add all of the little details, like the tires are ripped up, the fender like is missing some paint here and there, and they'll really like show it, you know what I mean? And or there's like fingerprints on the car, like you could actually physically see like where it left like a mark. And it's like those are the guys that always are like pushing me because it's like their stuff looks so realistic compared to mine. So it's I just try to keep it like that mindset, just like I'm never good enough. Like these guys are better, but I'll get there.
Hey man, that's humble. It's good. It's good. It keeps you moving forward.
Ashthorpe stuff is really good. I was just like looking at some of his stuff because we're actually having him on the podcast. Actually, we're doing two in one day, but we're having him this evening
today.
So
nice.
But yeah, like his work is so like you see it and you can see the grit and I don't know, the textures are just glorious, and it's like the car you feels like it's been used, and that adds a certain level of realism that just blows my mind, and it looks real. It looks so much realer than just the smooth, like just clean aesthetic.
Because realistically in real life, like nothing is ever that clean.
No,
you know what I mean? So it's like that's when they bring all that grittiness, and they use the same programs I use. It's just they sit down and they will take a fender and they will specifically texture that fender for weeks at a time. And that's why they don't produce work so often, but when they do, it's like, oh shit, like look at how he scratched it here, look at how he did this. And when you really take a graph of like texturing, it's endless. Like it's an infinite amount. Like I can't think of that word, but it's literally you could add so many things to just this one little texture node, and that's how you get this like realism. So it just depends on how much time you want to spend on it.
And so like when we're talking of like renders and all of this and 3D design, all of that, what our initial topic was people taking credit for other people's design and not giving credit, not giving all of that. So like what are some thoughts about that? Because I know Tim, you have your he has, I don't know if you've seen the 190E Evo that and so with your car you did like a kit, and it's pretty much custom. It's not what it was like, what it looked like from like the original Evo, but he's had people that have copied or tried to copy the design, and it's like a lot of the times like they never give credit.
Yeah, it's sort of inspired by a known thing anyways. So then there's other versions of it that sort of inspired other people, but I mean I've had people that have just straight up tried to like completely rip it off. So I mean I like the inspiration thing I get, because even like that sort of Pandem style one that Kaiza did in the early days, like I've had 190 forever, and then you start seeing those type of renders and you're like, hey man, I was kind of ahead of the curve here. And then I went and built my thing, and it's like I wasn't necessarily inspired by his design, but I was inspired by the potential that he sort of put out there. But my car is not even similar because he went with a completely different style kit. But it's like So of course you're inspired by like, hey, this is a cool thing. Like other people are into it too, so I'm gonna get to it. But then you see people, and I saw a couple different examples of it where it's like they're not inspired; they just straight up ripped it off, like just jacked it, and it's like, and then there's no credit given. So I was like, I don't like. My question would be like, is what's your expectation? Like, are you like by putting it out there, are you just, you know, like people are gonna do what they're gonna do, or it's like, you know, you'd expect a little bit of feedback. Like my car is amazing because a lot of people do tag me and everything, and it's done tremendous for us, but I didn't really have an expectation. I don't really necessarily get super offended by it, but for what you're doing, and that's your job, and you're putting out your piece of art, and then somebody that just straight up steal it. Like some of these guys are going so far, like your car is clearly patinaed and you've put a bunch of time into texturing, and it's like, they'll jack that too. Patina, like I could see like, hey, that stance, that, you know, it looks awesome, I'm going to do my version of it. But some people can't, they'll just straight up steal the whole thing. So like, what's your take on that kind of thing?
I would say like it's okay if you ask them beforehand and they're like, hey, is there any way that I can like kind of maybe modify this a little bit and put it, you know, to my build or whatever, and then it's just like, I'll tag you because you inspired me or whatever. Like I'm totally cool with that. But yeah, if you straight up like stealing something and you know that came from another build or another artist or whatever, and then you don't say anything, then it's just like, well, you know, middle finger, like, you know, like you didn't think of it, but you're gonna play it off like you thought of it, you know. And it's just, it really does get annoying because I've run into like a few of my friends that do renders. I think it was Walter Kim. It might have been Walter Kim or John Rendering. Somebody, he did like this wide body Z. It was like a 280Z or 270Z, and this guy is like actually building it, and like he was like, you know, showing progress on the fiberglass work and everything, but he didn't tag him at all.
Oh no.
And he found out about it because, you know, Instagram algorithm or whatever, or people were tagging him into it.
Oh, no.
And then he like actually posted about it. He's like, oh look, you know, like people stealing my designs or whatever. And then they were going, and then the guy actually like admitted like, hey, I'm sorry, you know what I'm saying, like I should have asked you first. But he was already like fully into like fiberglass work onto the build, you know what I mean? But just because he was called out, so it's like he wouldn't have done that otherwise. So I really think it's a big issue, like, because there's even there's a body swap page on Facebook.
Yes,
and
I follow that.
Robert 3D Design or whatever.
Oh yeah, I like his work too.
He does like the Beetle stuff.
Yeah.
Well, he did like a Beetle pickup or whatever. Yeah. And somebody's building.
See, this is my example, and I didn't know the guy, so I didn't want to call him out. But we had a conversation about it, and I was like, this guy straight up jacked this thing and has given no credit for it whatsoever. So it made me kind of upset. And I mean, you're unique in the fact that like you could potentially build your own renders.
Oh yeah.
So but I see like other rendering guys, like if you approach them, I assume that they would be like, hey man, I want to build that car, and you'd be excited to see it come to life if you didn't have those abilities. So like for you to render something, there's potential for you to actually build it yourself. So you'd probably be a little bit more sensitive to it than some of these other kids that are just rendering it. Like I'd be like, if I was a render guy and someone's like, hey, I want to build this in real life, I'd be pumped. But I understand from the business side of it, and because it's become a legitimate sort of almost trade, I guess, I don't know what you'd call it, a career, you'd be a little bit,
it could be a trade.
I don't know, I'm not great with that kind of stuff, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like this is your job now, and you don't want people stealing from you, kind of thing. So, but like in that particular instance was the one that I used as an example in our conversation. I was like, that is not cool, man. Like not cool at all.
Yeah.
Like it's
and
especially that you're doing a series of them and turned it into a business. Like there should be some royalty or some sort of recognition or something. Like that's just being a good person. Like
it's like a lot of the people that I do stuff for, they kind of want to keep stuff under NDA too. So it's like I can't show anything until they release a product because they're afraid of somebody taking their design. Like when I did Cam's 86, he was like, don't show anybody. I was like, okay. And now that, you know, his build is out there, whenever, and he's winning all these shows or whatever, now you're going to start to see people like putting an 8-to-1 header on their 86 or whatever, because he did it. Now they're inspired by it or whatever. But if I was to show the art first beforehand, somebody would have done it beforehand.
For sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I have to like be really like discreet with what I do, and that's why I don't post so many renders anymore. It's because it's like I'm working on these cars, but I can't show the cars, and which sucks because it's like builds excitement. For
you're like,
people,
oh, I'm gonna show people this.
Yeah.
Because people are out there that will steal the designs, and they will, and they won't say anything about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like the other day, because I'm building the '58 Bel Air now, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Rusty Slamington.
No.
It's that BMW that Mike Stanceworks built. It's like slam,
yes,
wide body.
Dude, that thing is amazing.
With the shark,
with
the
that
shark
wasn't a
mouth on the
fire,
side.
and then he transformed it, and that's a sick car.
I kind of want to aspire like the '58 Bel Air to that. So I did another render where it was kind of like Group 5, kind of wide bodied and everything. So I did that, but I was trying to make a piece that kind of went under the front bumper to kind of just give it this smooth like look. And another artist popped up, and he's kind of like a new one, but he did this cool, it was a BMW E30. I forget the guy's name, to be honest with you, but it was a BMW E30 that had a really cool body kit, but it kind of like came all together with this really nice like aero dam in the front. And I asked him, I messaged him, I was like, hey, is there any way that I could like kind of take that and put it on like my real car? Because it actually flowed. Like I modeled it on the car first to see how it would look. And it actually looked really great. But I was like, hey, I'm going to ask this dude, like, can I use this as an inspiration for like my actual build or whatever? But he never responded. So I was like, okay, well, I'll change it, you know, like, because I know how that is when it's just like, oh, okay, he totally took that part from me or whatever. But regardless, I'm gonna tag him in it just because it was like, hey, I saw that. That looked cool. You know, I didn't think of it the way that he thought of it, so I was like, all right, I like the way that looks, and it actually fit with the car. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But I don't.
That's really cool that you at least reached out to him and like tried to, I don't know, get his say so in that. But I feel like since you tried and he didn't respond, then I mean. Yeah, it's
because it's not like it was the whole body kit. It was
just the section.
Like, just the splitter under the front. Like the way that it connected up and like matched the fender. It looked cool. So I was like, I'll try that. You know. Yeah. But no response on that guy.
It's on a completely different platform. Then I think that falls into inspiration and not stealing.
I would agree with that 100% too. Like I think so. Your platform's entirely different than theirs.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff that I do, like I try to make it buildable for other people, like people that understand fabrication. So like if you look, like you can see, like I try to make wide body stuff, but I try to make wide body stuff for like the typical person at home that can build it, if that makes sense. Because cool. a lot of us don't have, you know, the body working skills or the metal shaping skills. I feel like a lot of these guys are using foam nowadays, so you can spray the foam or whatever and then sand it down to the shape, and then you can fiberglass over that or whatever. But you know, some of us don't have like all these metalworking tools that some of these guys use for you know, shrinking, stretching, and we can't make that. So it's like I try to, you know, tailor to the little guys, I guess you could say, if they wanted to build something like it.
Yeah, some of the struggles that we've had with having renders done very much on that point is like we're trying to create a part or a specific product, and the render will like just casually move a body line like an inch. It's like, buddy, nobody can do this at home. Like, we have to make this producible for the normal guy to be able to put this on. Like, yeah, that looks sick, but you understand what it would take to just move that like an inch? Like, we're basically making a whole new car at this point. Like, it's crazy. So that's like the crossover is trying to work between those, because some of the renders, like I say, is like, it's super cool to move a roof line like an inch and a half, but that's what, 20 grand worth of work in a month. Like, you know what I mean?
So, because even like, for example, the example of like chopping a car, like when I was growing up and I saw a car chop, I'm like, dang, that looks sick. It doesn't look that difficult. You just slash it in half and just join it. It shouldn't be that difficult. And then when I started learning about what it takes, I was like, oh, I never want to do that to a car. So
yeah,
because it's like, it's not just that roof chop. You have to also do the glass and all of these little things that you don't think of. And so, yeah, I think that's very interesting. Like, it's not that easy.
My friend Eddie, I posted the pictures on my story. I didn't really post them, but he's got a 57 Chevy called the Bel Air. So it's just this bagged and like, you know, it lays frame and everything, 57 Chevy. But he chopped the top, and the top is like this small, right?
Oh, wow.
Well, it's so small, but he had to extend the roof like in the middle.
Yeah.
I think it was like 6 inches. Like you had to take a strip down, because when you cut the roof that small, it didn't fit the AA pillars
to
or the
line
C
up
pillars
again.
anymore. So he had to stretch it in the middle like 6 inches, and then you have to stretch it on the sides like another 6 inches. And it's like he didn't actually like ever finish, you know, filling it and everything, so you could see where it's all tack welded.
Yeah.
But it's just like, damn, like that's a lot of work just for like that roof that you had to do to get it this small.
Yeah.
There's so much involved in doing that. It's unbelievable, hey?
Yeah.
Because even like Rob is also doing, like, it seems like a simple thing, but he's like eliminating what, like for the Skylark, like you're like making it a flush mount glass, because old cars like they were not flush mount, and so he's doing like flush mount glass. And even that, like, just seeing the amount of work you have invested in it blows my mind.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing to be able to go from, like, you know, the digital rendering with the hands-on skills to make it. It's that's kind of what, like, I really dig, like, how you go about doing that, like, and just, you know, it just keeps it real. Yes. And I like that.
Yeah.
And let's talk about my favorite part, body swaps. So I'm not sure if you know, but I have, minus the Lambo that we're doing, but I have a deep passion for body swaps. But I have a Jaguar Mark II, a 1960 Jaguar Mark II, and I'm taking a BMW E90, and I want to cut the body off. And put it
Don't
underneath.
encourage this guy.
I like cutting stuff up, so I'm good with it.
Yeah, it's just awesome. Because I want like an all-wheel drive, like daily driver car that I could drive in the middle of it. We're in Canada, it snows a lot, and I'm like, I want a car that I could drive in the middle of a snowstorm, and people are like, wait, what? You're driving this classic car in the middle of it? I don't know. I just think it's the coolest thing, and it's the most affordable way to get so much for not a lot of money. But I mean, it's a lot of time invested.
Yeah.
But you're doing a body swap right now, so just tell us about that.
So one of the renders that I'm doing currently is we're building, like, I'm actually helping with this one physically, is we're building a 98, it's a 96, 98, something like that, GS300 station wagon. So we're kind of doing that.
Did they ever come as a station wagon or no?
Nope. It'll be basically the first one.
That's pretty cool.
So we were trying to source like cars that had the similar like roof design or whatever, right? So we came upon the BMW, which is the E60, E61.
Yep.
So like 2006 to 2010 or something like that. It has kind of the same like roof line, like droop as the GS. It just kind of tapers off a little bit differently, but it looks the best out of like all the wagons that we've tried to find. So we found one on Copart. I kind of like went half in with the dude. Youngs is his name, or Leo. He built the Time Attack GS300 that was at SEMA in 2021.
I probably missed
the
that.
White one.
I don't remember.
We didn't go that year.
No, we missed that year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were. Yeah, so I went with him. We were in the tread pass that year.
Oh,
it was
nice.
the year that it was the year that Salvage to Savage had their like Tesla C10 and everything.
Oh
there, the DeLorean with the LS. So we were right next to them with the GS. But anyway, so he's a big GS guy. So we got the BMW. We've bought it on like Copart or whatever. It is salvage titled. But there's no like body damage or anything.
Oh.
Like there was no, it wasn't like wrecked in the front or anything like
Is
that.
it
Like, it looked
undercarriage?
like a clean car.
Mhm.
No, we thought that too. And the air, because it's got air ride in the rear,
Yep.
so the compressor is like dead because it won't actually lift it. It's
Mhm.
just kind of sunk in the rear. And I was like, oh well, maybe an armor's broken or something in the rear. But no, like everything's like good. Like they
What?
replaced everything.
What?
Yeah, it was clean.
That's
It was super
amazing.
clean. So
Okay.
it's only got 90,000 miles on it. But now that I've been cutting it up, I can tell where they bodyworked stuff because you can see the bodywork, you know, like it's coming off on the grinder or whatever.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, so it was hit on the side, on the driver's side somewhere, but they repaired it, and they repaired it nicely, which is like amazing.
Mhm.
But anyway, so we bought it from Copart. He's in Minnesota, so he had to go. He bought it in Pennsylvania, so he had to go drive 16 hours, take it back to Minnesota. Then I had to drive to Minnesota, so that took, you know, like a day or whatever. Helped him cut the roof off this thing. I'm gonna have a YouTube video up on it soon. But we cut the roof off, like the panoramic roof and everything. So he's got the entire roof section, and then he's like, "Hey, do you want the car? Like, I'm not doing anything with it. Like, it runs and it drives." And he actually, you know, tested it at the Copart place when
Oh,
we
nice.
picked it up. It's got a dead battery, but you know, we can replace a dead battery. But that's the only thing that's like wrong with it is the air compressor in the back is dead and the battery's dead. Other than that, like everything works. So I went and picked this thing up. He's like, "Here, just take it for free. Like you can have it."
Wow.
Like, you know, I've been friends with him for so long, and I was like, you know what, this is like perfect because I know a guy with an old Chevy that, you know, he wants some trade work done, some fab work done. So I was like, hey, I could just do a body swap or whatever. So we were in talks, so I went and picked that thing up. I finished cutting like the rest of it or whatever, and then I just picked up the 58 Bel Air. So it is a 4-door, which it's a parts car anyways. It's junk, it's completely rotten or whatever. But I was like, it would be fun because it's a rare body style.
Yep.
The only time you see these things like, you know, kind of junked up are like as dirt cars, and even then you don't really see them as like dirt cars or derby cars. But people usually restore these or turn them into lowriders here. And it's like, what if I got this car and then I just slammed it on this BMW as low as I can go, you know, like cut a bunch out of it because it's already cut up anyways. And then just, you know, weld it together or whatever and drive around with an all-wheel drive, like, you know, turbo inline 6 and just have fun, you know,
So
maybe piss a few people off.
That sounds
pretty
dope,
awesome.
man. That sounds cool. What a cool opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it all like kind of aligned within like the same week. It was like, hey man, do you want to build a chassis for me, and I'll give you this 58 Bel Air. And I was like, I'll think about it because I don't really want to do like trade work, you know, money talks kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll think about it. And then like a week later, he was like, hey, do you want this BMW? Like, come and get it. And I was like, oh,
Perfect. Actually.
I'll do your frame. Just yeah, we'll figure everything out. Oh, really? Yeah, okay. But yeah. So the wheelbase is off by like 3 inches. But
That's not
I'm
too
gonna
bad.
accommodate that. Yeah, in like the front clip because it's already like rusted and like kind of cut up. So I'm gonna just shorten it like 3 inches. So it might be like a little stubby nose kind of looking thing. But in the render that I did in the one behind me, you can't really tell.
No.
Like it doesn't.
So so that one behind you has everything that like has the BMW like chassis length, all of that underneath.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You can't tell, but those are
No.
like BMW seats and like the dash and everything in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But
you
yeah,
wouldn't
it's all
you can't
it's
really
cut down.
tell.
And the reason why I did the little like barge board kind of thing in the back of the front tire is because it'll take away like the visual of the wheel well where it should be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then you're like,
Nice.
okay, he didn't move the wheelbase
Yeah.
or whatever, or the fender back. You know,
Yeah.
like it doesn't look like it because of that. So that was the reason why I did that, was because it was like visually you could kind of tell with when it was the full fender. But I just cut it in the back because it was like, all right, now you can't tell.
Works
Yeah.
perfectly.
You know what I mean?
It looks
Yeah.
good too. It's
Yeah,
part of the
so-
design. Yeah.
That's a clever
Yeah.
trick, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, are you gonna have air suspension or push rod? How are you gonna do? Because that looks really low. So, how is it gonna sit? Is it gonna have enough clearance, or are you just gonna make push rods?
It has enough clearance to like where it's at now. So, I don't have a picture that I can like pull up right away, but basically, I have the body now on some dollies, some car dollies, and I kind of like moved it right next to the BMW, like as it sits, and the cowl side of things is just a little bit lower than the BMW like A-pillar section.
Yeah.
So if I cut the A-pillar section down just a little bit more, I can basically just put it down like where it's at. Like awesome. Everything will fit, and it'll be like, I think it was like 3 inches off the ground or something.
Cool. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. So,
giving me more ideas.
Yeah. So I'd have to assume that with the serious body drop and all of that stuff, and all the main suspension is going to have to be converted to like push rod or something, right?
No. So the way that I'm doing it is because either I'm going to cut the fenders out the way that it is, and it would be like a big radius job so that it has suspension travel and everything. I wanted to keep it factory as possible so that I get the handling of the BMW without modifying any suspension. Maybe I'll put it on coilovers because the rear does have the air suspension, but I think I'm going to just get rid of it and convert it to coilover.
Yeah.
And, maybe I could slam that down just a tad bit with a coilover, but as far as that, like, where the body will sit, it'll have like
enough
factory.
travel.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that works out well.
You know what
then.
I mean? So it's like I'm not physically messing with ball joint angles. I'm not messing
suspension
with
geometry. Yeah,
it's gonna just ride like how it was meant to ride, but it's gonna look physically low because like where I came from the lowrider world because my dad built lowriders. So it's like we were into mini trucks and slam down Impalas and everything. So it's like some of those guys would just body drop things, and they would still have like a good functioning truck or whatever,
Yeah.
So it's just that idea of it.
Yeah, some of the struggles we see with body swap stuff and when like what people are using as a platform is like the strut towers are super high. So it's like to get that body down low, because generally they want to put a much cooler looking body on something like the BMW, and those are always the struggles. So that's kind of what when as soon as I look at it, it's like, how are you gonna?
That's what I was asking.
You're gonna be poking out of the hood.
It's kind of where the struts are at. It's level kind of with the top of the engine.
Oh yeah.
So like, and the cowl, like I could see where the cowl is gonna line up at, where like the hood and everything would go, and it would pretty much almost be touching like the fenders or whatever. But I'm gonna have to actually like see how it lines up. But it looked like it was gonna just be touching like the top of the fenders.
That's a pretty big body. Usually the stuff that we see is like, you're trying to put some sleek body on, some late model platform, and you're like, there's so much stuff in there. Like the packaging is gonna be insane if you want to retain all of that stuff, which is why you're doing it. But it's just a monumental job. So that's me breaking him down all the time. Like, what are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with this? And he's just like, oh no. So
the BMW itself, I think, like I said, the wheelbase is 3 inches off. So I'm going to accommodate that in the body. Width-wise, the Bel Air is wider.
Really?
It was like 5 inches total, but it was like 2.5 inches per side. So
it's good for a wheelbase.
But it's weird because the BMW has a wider track width. So
that's interesting.
I think it all kind of like levels. It's like skinnier, but it's got a wider track width than the Bel Air by like a good amount, like 4 inches or something like that. So we'll see how it all kind of like lines up, but I think it's gonna work. And then the dash on the Bel Air is much bigger than the dash on the BMW. So I'll have some like gaps to kind of fill in the corners, but I can probably come up with something sleek for that. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping to get it. I'm hoping to get it on there like in the next few weeks.
Oh, perfect. It's giving me more ideas. So, because that was one of the questions I had, was that clearance that we were talking about of, I don't know if you would have enough or you have to like mess with the geometry a little bit, but That's very encouraging. So I will do some
super
measurements.
inspired over here. He's following very intently.
Yeah.
Because he's just trying to beat me down. Like, see, I told you.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I told you
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
I will
and
do some
the
measurements.
rear is actually it's not a true coilover, it's the spring with the shock
Yep,
deal.
yep.
So I don't have to deal with a strut back there. So
Yeah.
it's like I can get the back as low as I basically want it. But the front, is where it's gonna I might need to modify a little bit, but I'm gonna try to keep it as factory as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
keep
it's going to
watching.
be so cool, man. Like to be able to
Hopefully.
drive around in something that looks like that actually performs well. That's so
Yeah.
dope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, whatever issues
yeah.
you come up with, I'm sure you'll be able to find a way to figure it out.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
We're watching.
I am so excited to see it. But yeah, I think that is it. Did you have any questions for us?
How did you guys start? Like what did you guys get into, you know?
For us, it was just, this is all I ever wanted to do, but we had to progress through all the different stages. So
Yeah.
standard story, I go to try to get something welded and they made it seem like it was just like the biggest nuisance in the world at your local welding shop. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna take welding. So I go take welding, and then the progression from welding is we sort of showed an aptitude for metalwork. So then our boss at that time pushed us into fabrication. So then we did industrial fabrication and got tied up in that for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. But during that time, we were always building our business, and our actual business started in the back of an industrial fab shop. And we'd work all day and then go in there and work all night, and then it just progressed and got busier. So, and then now we're that standard 20-year overnight success story. It's like we come out of nowhere, but we've been doing it since we're in the back alley behind our house. So one of the big disconnects you get now is oh shit, you guys got all the tools and all the stuff. It's like, man, we've been grinding it out forever.
We didn't start like that in the beginning.
So yeah, it's been a journey, but
Right on. That's cool.
It beats
That's
having
cool.
a real job. So
Yes.
we'll just keep
Oh
doing
yeah.
it.
Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's like Tim was saying, sort of just grinding your way through it all, having a passion for the car. For me, cars and motorcycles and things like that never really came naturally at a younger age. I grew into that in my 20s, but I was more I don't know, not a non-formal sort of artist kind of thing. So I had all these visions in my mind and I used to draw wild pictures. I used to read Cartoons magazine and, read, just be part of that. My family was into going to the racetrack and stuff like that. So motorsports is a big thing for me. We never participated. We were just spectators. So that was kind of what kind of drove me. And then when Tim and I got together at an earlier age, he's got the business sense, and both of us kind of worked on our metalworking skill set, and TrickFactory was born. Like you said, it's been a long grind, but yeah.
I'd say it's recently has got a lot more exciting. I'd say probably within the last 3 or 4 years with, you guys doing your thing and all the computer stuff coming into it. Because I would say there's probably a few period of time, 5 or 6 years, where it felt like the industry just kind of flatlined and everything was starting to look the same. But now it's just wild again, and we're learning every single day, bringing in scanners and renders and CAD and machining stuff. It's so now it's exciting again. Whereas for a while it kind of everything looked the same.
Yeah, tapered off.
Yeah, and
and
sorry, but being into metalworking and things like that, it's difficult, and it takes a long time to create in metal, right? You got these wild ideas. We're at a really, really fascinating and very exciting time in the industry where composites and things like that are becoming a lot more accessible. You can DIY a lot of that stuff at home, you're talking shape and foam and using fiberglass. These are things that is available to all of us, and it allows you to create things your wild visions, man, your renders and just the things that are going on in all of our heads. We're at a time now where we can create these things. It's super inspiring, and it man, looking at your renderings and the things that are going on out there in the world, if that doesn't fire you up, man, you're dead inside. These things, you can make these things now,
Yeah, it's not just art And like, oh, okay, that's a cool idea. But now it's like, oh wait, people are actually putting these things together now.
Yeah.
You know, and like one of my friends, he's got a 3D printer, and he 3D printed his own wide body.
Yeah.
Like at home, he printed it in like 5 sections. So like from the front, and then he had it connect kind of like a Lego style.
Yeah.
And then he got it all together, and he, you know, body worked it, and then he fiberglassed it, and it was just like, oh, you could do that from home. Just get some filament and, you know, take your design, cut it down like in the program, and just like stick it together.
Yeah, the fact that that's a thing now is absolutely amazing. Yeah. So that's pretty wild. We have these opportunities now, and it's so accessible. It's just it's wicked, dude. And it's cool to see, you know, you're a lot younger than us, and it's cool to see guys of your age, you know, coming up and grinding away and like creating some really, really unique shit. So props to you, man. Keep grinding.
Appreciate that.
It's coming along well. Yeah. And we really look forward to seeing how you keep going. You know, you're inspiring us too.
Inspiring old dudes.
Yeah.
I'm doing something right.
Yeah, you're doing it, man. You're doing it. Yeah, there's probably a lot of people they could take a lot from you from that. So
yeah, a lot of people message me too, and they're just like, the fact that you're doing this outside, like in your backyard, because like I've never had access to a garage, like you know, like my family in general, you know, we don't have like a lot of money or whatever, so it's just like, you know, give me a piece of slab concrete or whatever, and I'll figure it out. And you know, it's just, I like doing it, you know, and people say like, it's just crazy that you're doing it to that level and you're that committed that, like, you know, in the weather, because there's times where it'll be raining or something and I'll just still be outside cutting something. Or like now here in New Mexico, it's like 105 degrees outside, but I'm still cutting stuff up. Like, you
it's
know,
cool that you get
trying to make it happen.
That you get to show that progression, because we never got to. So like a lot of the things that we talk about and why we end up sort of a little semi-controversial on certain things is because it looks like we're just starting at the top. But like we're the exact same way. It's like gravel driveway behind the house. Then we literally poured our own slab, then built our own garage, worked in there for 5, 6, 7 years. Every bit of money that we made doing side projects went into new tools. And it was like, oh, if we do this, then we can buy the tool to actually do this job properly instead of having to do it the hard way. And then it was like this slow progression into all these sort of things. So it's like, it's super cool that you get to show that whole, because all these young guys just right away dismiss it like, well, I can't do what you do because I don't have all the money and all these crazy tools, but you can do it. Like we joke about it all the time. Like we started with a hacksaw and a hand drill and made, like I think back to some of the things that we made, and it's like I'm impressed with myself. Like, holy shit. Like that is crazy that we made that, because it was like, our time wasn't worth anything to us at the time. So it was like, I would put 20 hours into something, like just hand filing it just to get to where I needed to go. And I wish that, like, which is, like I say, is great that you're able to show that sort of journey, because a lot of these kids need to understand that, like, you don't need all this crazy shit. And it's like, again, the downside of it is that like all 3D printers and scanners are so much more accessible, and it's progressing so rapidly that I think some of these kids get discouraged and just right away dismiss, like there's no point in me even starting because I'm never going to catch up, which is not the case.
Basically.
Like I would go to a car show and I'll appreciate some kid that's just putting nothing but time in over some of these other guys that, you know, like dropped $500,000 on a car, whereas this kid's over here whittling it away out of scrap steel. I'll stare at his car for an hour and a half before that, because I've seen that. There's nothing really unique about it. You just bought a lot of expensive parts and put them all in one place. And I mean, we're guilty of it sometimes too, because we got to pay bills, and that's exactly what the customer wants. Like, I want that. So you put it together, you send it out. But at the same time, in the shop, we have our own passion projects that are like, they don't make sense, like at all. Like, it's like, the amount of time and effort invested is like, you're an idiot. What are you doing? You're like, I just got to see it through. I got to see
it through, man.
You've already gone that far.
So
and that's like where it started for me too, where it was like, okay, I want a cool, you know, roll cage or whatever in my car. Okay, so I take it down to the local, you know, chassis shop or whatever, and they want to charge, you know, $10,000 for a freaking, you know, chassis or whatever. And I was like, man, I can't afford that. Or go to the guy to go do, you know, paint and body work or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, the body work and paint, everything's going to be 30, 40 grand or whatever. And it's just like, I can't afford any of this, like that, you know. So it's like that's like the whole thing is like everything that I'm doing is it's like it's on a cheap, and it's like I just put it together, but I try to turn it into like art, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
You know, functional art. So it's like, and I think that's what like stands out with like the people, because you know I'm not in the position to where I have money. Instagram and like social media can make it seem like you have money, but it's like I don't have money at all. I saved up and bought some tools, but I'm still just like engineering things backwards so that I know how they work, and I can put it together with, you know, X and Y, and you know, here's your outcome kind of thing. Like my front suspension out of my rat rod is from a 2004 like Grand Marquis, like you know, Crown Vic front subframe, but it's like I'm just cleaning it up and making it look better than the factory. Like I'm using a K series K24 Honda engine that's mated to a BMW transmission. That's then going to be mated to a 2018 Scion FRS like rear end. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just, but it's like these are like hand-me-down parts. You know what I mean? So it's just like just make it work, and you know it might take a little bit of money, but you know not a lot of us have the access to that.
And we sort of preach it all the time, and it doesn't necessarily come across as like you can take a stock part and just spend some time cleaning it up, refinishing it, and it'll look better than an expensive part. Just through time and effort. And a lot of the stuff that we've done that stands out the most, there's like it's more about the stuff we've taken away than the stuff that we've added. And people stand there and like, oh man, like if you can get something so clean that people wonder how it works, like, how does this run? Where is everything? So we're not buying and throwing expensive parts at it. It's like placement and refinishing and having things, you know, pushing certain things back just by changing the color. So you're not, you know, put red hoses on something and it's like, oh my God, you know, just make them black, push them back. And then it's like just cleaning stuff up. So it's like, it's a big disconnect in the way things are done now. So it's cool to see it like from the start. So it's just, it's hopefully something comes from it. I'm hoping to get these things out and, you know, hopefully take them to SEMA and then see where it goes from there.
Like I always wanted to do stuff, but I didn't have anyone around me that knew about cars or anything. So I had to pretty much learn everything from YouTube. And so, like with my Datsun, like my wide body Datsun, I got like a Harbor Freight welder, sheet metal from Home Depot, and just tacked everything together and like made it at least look not as terrible as it looked when I found it. But even at that level, I didn't do a great job, and I knew it, but whenever I started working at the shop, because I'm the media, what's my media?
He can make up his own title. It's like executive in charge of...
some manager of media or something. But I manage all the social medias, all of that stuff. So I have my own projects on the side. But it's really cool to be able to work here because they show me all the things, because I've made so many mistakes, but they've also made a lot more mistakes than I have, like in the past. And so I initially would have my one janky way of doing something, and they're like, no, you have to do it this way if you don't want to redo this again in like 2 months after you're driving down the road and something happens in the car or something like that. And so it's really cool to have like their I guess knowledge,
because we're literally those guys now. Like we've became those guys where it's like, I want a roll cage, you're like, okay, it's 10 grand. I want a crazy paint job, you're like, okay, it's $40,000. So that's kind of where we're at that level where we're a disconnect from those young guys. But the thing that I don't see is those young guys asking for guidance. It's just that immediate dismissal. So then it's like, if you ask me, I can tell you how to do it cheaper if you want to do it on your own and offer you some guidance. But instead, it's like, because we have like one end of the spectrum and the other, and we're sort of at this end now and work towards that, it's like it's just immediately dismissed. So it's like they're missing a huge opportunity for, and I'm sure there's some guys that are legitimate gatekeepers that are like, fuck you, this is, you know, our thing, and if you can't afford it, then I don't have time to talk to you. But we're not those guys.
No.
So it's like there's a progression, and I think there's like opportunity to, you know, start here and move there. So like I keep saying, like watching you evolve through all the steps and being able to show these kids that, I hope they latch onto that and sort of see that this is like a very natural progression. You don't just start at the top. Like and I wish they would do more stuff to get an appreciation for how long it takes and how hard it is. Because it's just like, for us, it's like, oh, we're building this. Like, is it done yet? When's this going to be done? What's wrong with you guys? Why haven't you finished this yet? Like, buddy, it's been months.
Why isn't it finished?
It's been months. You're like, oh my God. Okay, cool. Like, we'll do what we can, but
yeah, it is very interesting.
Yeah, so it's a weird thing, but
yeah, even with the what's it called, the Lambo Tahoe thing that we're doing, we keep on getting messages and it's like, oh, you guys have been building this thing for months and you haven't done it yet, or it's not done. Yeah, I'm like, you come do this.
We literally work on it like, because it's completely side thing, completely for fun, literally only for social media because it's leftover parts and pieces, and we get to work on it like maybe 3 or 4 hours a week.
Not even every week, like once every 2 or 3 weeks, because we have to be like, this is a shop, and so it runs, and we need to be able to, I don't know, do other things that pay the bills and all of that, and so it's more like a side project. But it's interesting with the way social media is now. People just think things are just instantaneous and don't think you actually have to spend so much time working on things. And so so that disconnect is still there, and so we're like, nope, we're still working on it. One day it'll be done, but
so your channel is like, it's super unique in that respect, that you've rendered it and now you're going through all the steps to create it. So it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. Awesome. You've inspired me a lot with like seeing how far you've come, even though I have been following you for maybe like a year or so now, but it's like, it's pretty cool to see that you do pretty much the whole gamut. Pretty much, you fabricate, you design, and all of that.
It's definitely it's time consuming, but it's fun. Like it's really fun because like now I'm working with like a lot more companies that are helping out, and they're seeing that I'm actually doing things like one of the companies, Send Cut Send. I don't know if you follow them. They do all the laser cutting and everything. So I did a render for them for their jet car that they revealed last year.
That weird looking low thing. Oh shoot, that was pretty cool.
I designed that, and then they just kind of made it real or whatever. And then, but I met them years previously from Kyle Kuhnhausen.
He
does all the crazy. So like it was weird because we went to SEMA, and like this was before like I was, I guess, decent at fabrication or whatever. But he like knew who I was. Like he came up to me. I know who he was, but he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, dude, I love what you're doing. Like, good work. Like, keep it up, whatever. I have an opportunity for you." It's just like, "Oh, okay. Like, cool." And then so he introduced me to Jim, which is the owner of Send Cut Send, or one of the owners or whatever, CEO. And so like I've been working with them for a while now with doing all my CAD stuff. Like I specifically saved up money and I bought my own CNC plasma, and like I learned CAD myself and everything. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna make so many cool parts, and then it's like now I don't even use it. It just sits in the garage because I'm just using them because they're like supporting everything, and I'm just like, man, I feel spoiled, but at the same time it's like it took a long time to get here, you know what I mean? So it's finally starting to show, and it's like it's super cool, like all the people I get to meet and like all the stuff that I'm doing and the opportunities that like they're just kind of, you know, coming with it, with everything that I'm doing. So it's fun. It's definitely fun. Like I hope there's more in the future, but
I mean, you know, that's a testament to what you're doing, because like I'm not trying, it's like we get dismissed because we have sponsors and all this kind of stuff, but there's a lot of requirements that you got to meet, and they want to see that you're doing it, and they want to see that you're, you know, all this kind of stuff. So it's a whole nother side of it that I think people dismiss, and it's like, it's admirable when you do it and you prove yourself and you're showing that grind and you're showing consistency, and that's literally what it takes to get sponsors, and you see things get progressively easier and easier and easier. So it's like, it's pretty cool. So
and it's like, go ahead.
No,
I don't know
ahead.
if you were going to say something.
No.
Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely helping a lot. Like I said, it's just like I'm doing all this all myself, really. So it's like when people are getting on board and making it easier for me, then I can show more of like what I can do, you know, based off of their services or whatever. Like now I'm working with someone, Nuke Performance.
I love those guys.
I met them at SEMA a couple years ago too, and it's like Gustav and Tor, they're just like we want to be on board with what you're doing. So I was like, all right, let's do it. So, now I've got them on board, which is like a whole different ball game for me, because it's like, trying to afford these big name parts and everything is just can be difficult when you're doing it yourself.
Good guys. Yeah, my car's full of their stuff too. I love it.
Yeah, we use it
often.
They've
been really good with us. So
yeah, they're really cool. And so it's like, just who I meet is basically like great at the end of the day. Who wants to like basically show that like, okay, we can put our trust in this guy because he's actually doing something. You know what I mean? So it's like, and I hope that everybody takes away from that. That's just like, it won't just come to you.
It won't.
Like no one's just gonna be like,
no one's got a free ride. Like, so it's like,
no
you see a lot of these people with all this sponsorship. It's like, when I see it, they had to have at some point put the grind in to prove themselves worthy of getting. And it's not always free stuff. Like, a lot of times you're just getting a discount, or you see the crossover between the two things and an opportunity to promote each other. And even what comes with that, it gives you other opportunity. Because when you start getting sponsors, I feel like it starts to legitimize what you're doing and who you are, because bigger companies and bigger entities want to participate with you. And it's generally based on your efforts. Like, it didn't come from nothing. So it's like, that's a pretty cool part of it. So when I see people that are starting to pair with different companies and opportunities, it's like, I know that there's more behind it because I've had to do it. So it's like, this guy must be doing real things if these guys want to participate with him. So it's like, I think that's where some of these kids, like, they think it's just free stuff. Like, they hit them up like, hey, can I get this? And you're like, well, what are you going to do for me? So it's like, you got to prove yourself before you can even approach them generally. So, or buy their parts. Like, a lot of times I'll fall in love with somebody's part. Like, I'm sure you're aware of it. Like, we've done a whole bunch of SEMA stuff, and I've been offered all kinds of things, but if I don't believe in that part, I won't use it, even if it's free. So like, guys like Nuke and stuff, like, they've stepped up, and you're like, man, this stuff is great. And it's like, I don't expect it for free, and it's awesome that they offer me discounts and they have sent me free stuff, but I make sure everybody knows that I use their stuff and that I love it. And then that's where they get their value out of me. So it's like, but a lot of people are just like, oh, you get free everything, so that's why you can do what you can do. You're like, no, man, it's sweat equity. I've been earning this since day one. So
and it's like, I work 5-6 hours a day, and then like I start my day off at like 5:30 in the morning, and then I'll work my 5-6 hours, and I'll come home and I'll do another like 8 to 10 hours fabricating stuff or rendering stuff. And it's just like, I've been doing it the same thing for 5-6 years straight now, and it's just like, that's what I'm saying, like, it's finally starting to pay off, but it's like, it took me so long to get here. You know what I mean?
It's a long haul.
So
overnight
it really is.
It's probably never going to get easier too, Dom. Is you're just going to keep on moving up the ladder, and it just, the challenges just get deeper and deeper. So just keep grinding, man, because you're doing it.
We haven't stopped.
I'm definitely trying.
Every time we think we're get there, it's like something new comes on. You're like, oh no, now we need one of those. Here we go again. So
like my biggest thing now is, it's like, now that I've stepped into the CAD world, I have a friend that has a 3-axis CNC, and I'm just like, man, if I had that tool, I could do so many things with it, and it's just like, that would be like cool for me. I want to learn like all these machines and everything.
That's so the curse, because we're the exact same way. So every time it's like, okay, we got one now, and then it's like, oh, here's the new one. You're like, oh, and it literally never ends. Like, it never ends. If you're in it and you want to be constantly progressing, and like, it never ends. Like, you're never going to get rich doing this, because you're constantly reinvesting into things. But I mean, it opens up so many doors and keeps it interesting. So, like, we're old now,
and it's like,
but I didn't even realize I got old, because it's just we've been going the whole time. We haven't had time to get old, because we're just constantly like, grinding.
Oh, that much time's passed?
Holy shit.
But it's just like, and I'm not even doing it to like even make money from it. If I make money from it, cool. It's just like, I'm just doing it just because like it's fun doing it. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of things too. Like, people are just like, man, I love what you're doing. It's like inspiring, like, hope you're doing well. And it's just like, you're going to make a lot of money in the end. And I'm just like, I mean, money's cool, but it's like, I'm just doing it because I like doing it. Like the fact that I have the tools I have now and like the people that are backing me, it's just gonna make the ideas even more ridiculous that I can bring to life. And it's like, that's what's fun is like being able to do all this stuff myself with like my own hands. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the sort of the blessing part of it is we can't necessarily afford the things that we can create. And other people have to make money to buy what we make, but we can just make it. So we might not have all the money in the world, but we have the things that, you know, so it's pretty cool to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I'd say like for us, we're kind of the same as you, like not really in it to make money. Like, we're running a business, we're doing this, and we have, you know, the responsibility of what that actually means, but like it's the passion of like creation.
We joke about it all the time.
You know, like that's the driving force of it, and that's, you know, if you love what you do and you do it for that reason, the money is the other side of it that doesn't really matter. Like it matters, but it's not the driving force. Yeah. And you find great success just in pursuing that. You know, that alone is worth pursuing.
We miss the garage days.
Honestly.
When you're just out there doing it just for the sake of doing it. Yeah. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
So like seeing guys like you, Dom, like you're out in your driveway, man, rain or shine.
We're jealous of you.
Doing your thing. And I was like, damn, dude, that looks dope, man.
And it's funny because so where I live, we live on a little bit bigger than an acre like property, right? So we split it down in half because I'm supposed to get like the other half, so I could take care of my grandpa and everything. And it's like I think about it, and it's like I want to build this, you know, 4-car shop or whatever, so that I have this cool workshop or whatever to work in. But it's like I actually strangely like working outside. Like even though it's hot, it gets windy. Like we get terrible wind
dusty,
here. It gets so that's like, you know, it sucks welding sometimes because I have to fight the dust and all that inside the crevices. But it's like, it's honestly like an experience. And it's like, I know once I go to like a shop kind of deal, it's just like, and I'm gonna miss working outside. And I don't even know if I even really want to spend the money on the shop, because it's just like, I'm cool with just a shade structure and the slab on, you know, the side, and I could build some stuff out of it.
We got a crazy facility here, and like I was out doing a top end on a Bentley out in front of the shop in the parking lot, just out in the sun doing my thing. So I feel it.
Yeah, man.
Those are good days.
So, but you gotta evolve. You gotta do your thing, and just the natural progression of it will be a thing. But you'll always reflect back on these times, right? And you'll be like, man, I remember when that was dope. You know, it was fun.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Awesome. I think. Yeah, I don't even know how long we've gone.
Took a little bit more time.
Like, oh my gosh, we've been going for a while. But
2 hours.
I know. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining in on this podcast.
Yeah,
we'll be following your work as usual, and we're looking forward to see all the awesome things that you create. So again, if you guys are interested that are listening, he is Altered Intent. So just type it in Instagram, Facebook. What else do you have? TikTok. And you guys can check out some of his awesome builds and all of that. If this is your first time also listening or watching, we are TrickFactory Customs. You can check us out all our social media platforms. TrickFactory Customs, Instagram, TikTok, same things he's on pretty much. And we will see you guys next week. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Dom. Great time with you, man.
Looking forward to meeting you and seeing you in 2023.
Oh, yeah. I guess we're going to see you.
See you.
That'll be fun.
Yeah,
I'll see you guys
Can't wait to see that Model T down there, man.
Yeah. Sick. Okay.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Keep it up. See ya. Bye.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Later.